Panzerknacker, a German expression meaning armour breaker, is often applied to a special kind of World War II ace, not a pilot or a U-boat commander, but a humble foot soldier who took on and destroyed enemy tanks single-handed, using normally one of three available weapons: the magnetic mine, the satchel charge, or more famously, the Panzerfaust. Tackling tanks using handheld weapons required levels of intestinal fortitude that were off-the-scale brave, and unsurprisingly, the Germans developed a special award for such men. The usual way tanks were dealt with on the World War II battlefield was by the use of anti-tank guns, or by tanks or tank destroyers. But if all else failed, infantrymen were given some basic weapons to allow themselves to stop charging enemy tanks. Anti-tank mines such as the famous German Teller mine being one. Chucking grenades at a tank was rarely successful unless the infantryman managed to get at the engine bay, likewise with the use of firebombs or Molotov cocktails. Tanks usually operated in conjunction with other tanks and supporting infantry, and breaking cover to attack a tank meant exposing oneself to machine gun fire from other vehicles and soldiers. The Germans developed an ingenious shape-charge device to at least give the infantry a fighting chance. The Haftholedung entered service in 1942, a cone-shaped weapon containing 2.3 kilos of shaped high explosive, the device being magnetic. If the soldier could ambush the tank, he could slap one of these magnetic mines on the hull, pull the pin and get clear. The device was immensely popular, but it still required a soldier to run up to the enemy tank and attack it, with obvious consequences. The British tested captured examples in 1943. They reported that it was capable of knocking out any Allied tank then in service. Bigger versions of the mine were created by the Germans with up to 10 kilos of high explosive. Another excellent weapon developed by the Germans was the Panzerknacker. A standoff bazooka-like anti-tank rocket launcher. This crew-served weapon consisted of a stovepipe-style tube about 5 feet long, open at both ends, and fitted with a trigger mechanism and sights. A shield protected the gunner from the backblast of the 88mm armor-piercing rocket. It was actually an enlarged and more improved and more powerful version of the US bazooka, and entered service in 1943. However, it was not issued to individual soldiers, and instead would be used by well-trained two-man teams. What the Germans needed was a disposable anti-tank weapon that could be handed out in large numbers to infantry and be used by any soldier with rudimentary instruction, turning entire infantry platoons and companies into tank hunters. Overcoming the problem of infantry exposing themselves to fire in order to attack tanks single-handedly was solved by the creation of the Panzerfaust family of single-shot, man-portable anti-tank weapons. The simple metal tube incorporating a trigger mechanism and a rudimentary sight. A warhead was fitted that was a high-explosive anti-tank weapon. The weapon wasn't a rocket, as some people think. Rather, the warhead was propelled by a black powder charge, the hollow tube acting as an exhaust, making the Panzerfaust a recoilless weapon. The warhead was fired at an angle, with an effective range of 60 meters or 200 feet. It had much more destructive power than the US bazooka or the German Panzerknacker rocket, and in urban combat in Eastern Europe in 1944-45, it was responsible for around 70% of tank kills. Operating such a system still required a lot of courage when facing down tanks, but the standoff capability, in comparison to the magnetic anti-tank mine, at least gave the operator a greater chance of survival. Naturally, some men became very adept at knocking out tanks using such weapons, and were rewarded accordingly, creating a whole new type of ace, the Panzerknacker. The German army created a series of very highly regarded badges that were worn on the right upper arm. Called the Tank Destruction Badge, it was introduced in 1942, backdated to the start of the invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941. It was awarded to an individual soldier who had knocked out an enemy tank or armored fighting vehicle using a handheld weapon, meaning that the crews of anti-tank guns couldn't win this award. For doing this once, the soldier received the badge in silver, and the same badge could be awarded for up to 4 successful actions. In December 1943, a special gold version of the badge was introduced for 5 successful kills, the holder becoming an ace in the same manner as a fighter pilot. The recipient would remove his 4 silver badges and only wear the gold one, adding silver badges for each subsequent kill up to 9 tanks before receiving another gold badge and so on. These soldiers would have also received normal gallantry awards as they performed these valorous feats, particularly the Iron Cross 2nd and 1st class. In total, 18,500 silver tank destruction badges were issued before war's end, and around 400 gold badges. Some famous Panzerknackers were Adolf Peikel, an Austrian Waffen-SS NCO who later became an officer. He was credited with 11 tank kills using various handheld weapons, and as well as a handful of combat decorations, was awarded the Knight's Cross in October 1944 for his tank busting against the Soviets and the Western Allies. He survived the war and died in Vienna in 1969, age 52. It has proved difficult to sort out myth from fact concerning some Panzerknacker aces or the number of kills, and many of the high scores have been challenged or are unproven. The generally accepted ace of aces was Gunther Widzenz, a young officer in the Army's 7th Grenadier Regiment who successfully knocked out 21 enemy tanks, earning himself 4 gold tank destruction badges and 1 silver badge. Like Peikel, Widzenz received the Knight's Cross in July 1944, and he also survived the war, becoming a colonel in the post-war West German Army, the Bundeswehr. He died in Cologne in 1999. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, details in the description box below.